So here's a question for you. How does a company that got its start simply by putting medicine into these tiny, consistent pills back in 1880s Chicago, how does that company evolve into a 40-plus billion-dollar global behemoth that touches literally everything you can imagine?
It's an amazing story.
I mean, we're talking about the entire spectrum here, from really basic consumer stuff like baby formula and protein shakes, all the way up to incredibly complex heart implants, deep brain stimulation systems.
And even those little credit card-sized COVID tests that we all had sitting on our kitchen counters just a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
It really is just a spectacular exercise in corporate longevity, in survival, and this kind of relentless strategic diversification.
And I think that's the key word, diversification.
It is. Abbott Laboratories is one of those companies that kind of flies just under the radar for most people. Their name is everywhere. You probably have one of their products in your house right now, but you rarely grasp the full scope of what they actually do.
Right. People might know them for one thing, like Similac or Ensure, maybe.
Precisely. They associate them with a single brand and completely miss the fact that fundamentally they are a medical technology giant.
Well, that complexity is exactly what we are going to try and cut through today. Our mission in this deep dive is to take all this extensive corporate and financial source material and distill the core insights. We're going to detail the history, the current structure, and the really significant impact of Abbott Laboratories.
And the goal, really, for you, the listener, is to walk away with a quick grasp of the sheer and often surprising scale of this multinational.
And when we talk about scale, let's put some numbers on it.
We have to. Based on the 2024 financial data we looked at, we are talking about a company that brought in a staggering $41.9 billion in revenue.
41.9 billion.
Yeah. And just for context, that is roughly the GDP of a medium-sized nation. They employ about 114,000 people and operate actively in over 160 countries. It is a true global powerhouse.
That is just immense. And it immediately makes you wonder, how do you even manage that? How do you manage $40+ billion across such a diverse portfolio?
Well, what we found so fascinating is how clearly they've organized the modern company. It's built on 4 core pillars, and that gives us a fantastic roadmap for understanding their whole business model.
Okay, so what are these 4 pillars?
They define the modern Abbott. You have nutrition, diagnostics, medical devices, and then established pharmaceuticals. And if you look at that 2024 revenue breakdown, it gives you a crucial insight into where the company is really focusing its capital and its future growth.
And medical devices is the big one.
It is the undisputed king. It brings in 45% of the total revenue.
So nearly half of all the revenue is from, essentially, hardware for the human body.
Precisely. Nutrition follows at 22%, diagnostics is right behind that at 20%, and then finally, established pharmaceuticals makes up the remaining 13%.
That 45% figure for medical devices, that feels like the defining statistic for modern Abbott.
I think it is.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole journey. Let's start from that really simple, original invention back in Chicago. Where did this all begin?
Well, it begins with a dedicated medical practitioner. The genesis story of Abbott Laboratories starts with Dr. Wallace C. Abbott. Now, he wasn't just a physician. He was also a drugstore owner, and he saw a fundamental flaw in the way medicine was being delivered in the late 19th century.
This was back in 1888, right?
1988. He founded the Abbott Alkaloidal Company right there in Ravenswood, Chicago.
So wait. His big innovation wasn't some complex new machine or a new chemical compound. It was just making the dose consistent.
That's it.
That feels like such a fundamental concept today that we just take for granted. But back in the 1880s, that was revolutionary.
It was absolutely revolutionary. You have to think about what medicine looked like back then.
Oh.
Dr. Abbott saw that the liquid preparations of the era, the tinctures and tonics, they were highly inconsistent. And they deteriorated really rapidly over time.
So you never really knew what you were getting?
Never. Imagine trying to dose out a really critical, powerful drug like morphine from a solution that might be, say, 10% effective one day and 50% effective the next. Dosing was erratic, efficacy was unreliable. It made patient recovery a real guessing game.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. He tackled this by isolating the active parts of medicinal plants, the alkaloids, things like quinine, codeine, even strychnine and morphine.
Right, and he formulated them into what he called dosimetric granules.
And that consistency was the secret sauce.
That was everything. These tiny granules were manufactured in a standardized way, which ensured that every single patient received a highly consistent and effective dosage. every single time.
It was a simple idea, but just a vital advance in pharmaceutical precision and stability.
It really was. It moved medicine away from the guesswork of, old potions and tinctures and toward the industrial standardized dosing that we all expect today. That foundational focus on precision is what carried the company forward for decades.
But the company we know today, this medical device and diagnostics powerhouse, that didn't really solidify until they performed what you could almost call a massive act of corporate surgery in the 2010s.
That's exactly right. The next truly pivotal phase, the one that reshaped the entire identity of Abbott Laboratories, happened between 2004 and 2013. You can see the strategic shift happening early on as they started sort of pruning these mature divisions that didn't quite fit the high-growth, high-tech trajectory they were aiming for.
Like in 2004, for example, they spun off Hospira, which was their entire hospital products division.
And that division focused on specialty injectable pharmaceuticals and medication management, a huge business.
So that pruning was strategic.
Very strategic. And it's interesting, Hospira was later acquired by Pfizer in 2015, which just confirms that Abbott was willing to shed these large, profitable, but less specialized parts of the business to focus its capital elsewhere.
But the real defining moment, what you call the Great Divide, that happened on January 1st, 2013.
Yes, with the corporate spin-off that created AbbVie.
And this was monumental. This wasn't just a renaming, it was a deep structural cleaving of the company into two separate entities. So why did they choose to separate the pharmaceutical division, which was, frankly, producing enormous cash flow from the rest of the business?
Well, the motivation was really twofold: de-risking and focusing. AbbVie took control of the research-based, patent-driven pharmaceutical business. This included the commercial rights to blockbuster drugs like the anti-inflammatory Humira and the anti-epileptic Depakote.
Okay, so huge revenue generators,
Yep.
but what was the risk?
Well, while those drugs generated incredible revenue, they were also inherently tied up in what's called a heavy patent cliff, meaning their patent protection was set to expire soon. And they were also linked to massive litigation risks, which we'll definitely discuss later.
Okay. So the key insight here is that Abbott Laboratories was essentially shedding the most volatile, high-risk part of its business. They were offloading the risk of patents expiring and the potential for these multi-billion-dollar lawsuits attached to some older pharmaceutical practices.
Precisely. Abbott Laboratories kept the global medical devices, the diagnostic tools, the highly stable nutritional products, your Similac and Ensure, and the branded generic drug portfolios that are marketed exclusively overseas.
So it was a massive reorganization.
Immense. It required them to cut hundreds of staff members in preparation,
Right.
but it set the stage for the highly diversified, cash flow stable, tech-focused company we see today, defined more by hardware and diagnostics than by drug patents.
So if that split defined the modern Abbott, let's dive into those four core divisions that survived that great corporate surgery and now account for that $41.9 billion in annual revenue.
Let's do it.
And just as a quick reminder, medical devices is the biggest slice of the pie at 45% of 2024 revenue.
Absolutely. The model is now set. 45% medical devices, 22% nutritional products, 20% diagnostic products, and 13% established pharmaceuticals. So let's start with Pillar A, nutrition. This is the division most people recognize, yet it's also one that has brought the company some really intense public scrutiny recently.
Right. The nutrition division is home to some of the most recognizable brands in the world, playing a critical role in everything from feeding infants to providing supplemental nutrition for the elderly.
And a key strategic moment here was the 1964 merger with Ross Laboratories. This didn't just add a few products, it immediately brought the iconic baby formula Similac under the Abbott umbrella.
So Similac wasn't an original Abbott product.
No, that acquisition secured their position in the highly regulated and immensely profitable infant nutrition market. It's really foundational to consumer trust.
And Similac is just one entry in a surprisingly broad pediatric portfolio. They offer variations like Similac Neosure, Essentia, Tumacare.
Often designed for specific infant needs, like premature babies. Then, of course, you have Pedialyte for rehydration, which is a staple in households for children, and, increasingly for adults dealing with illness or post-exercise recovery.
And Pediasure for supplemental children's nutrition.
Right. But the nutritional story doesn't end with kids. The adult and special needs category is enormous, and it's driven by demographic trends in developed markets. This is where you find the powerhouse brands like Ensure,
A huge market leader.
the market leader in providing complete balanced nutrition, including high-protein versions like Ensure Gold. They successfully tapped into this vast market of aging populations and hospitalized patients.
And they also cater to highly specialized dietary needs, too, particularly for a growing global diabetes population.
Exactly. They have Glucerna, which is a brand marketed specifically for managing blood sugar levels in people with diabetes. And what's fascinating is the regional variation in branding. For example, in India, Glucerna is often branded as Ensure Diabetes Care.
Why do they do that?
It just shows how Abbott tailors its marketing and distribution strategy to local brand familiarity. The Ensure name is just more trusted in that market. And of course, they maintain a presence in convenience nutrition with products like Zone Perfect bars.
So it's their most publicly visible division. But often, the most important work, particularly financially and technologically, is happening in the next two pillars. Let's move to Pillar B, diagnostics.
Yes.
This is the division that truly showcases Abbott's ability to innovate rapidly and deploy technology on a massive scale.
Diagnostics is all about understanding what is happening inside the human body, and it covers everything from routine blood work to complex disease surveillance. The division is highly diversified, so it covers core lab testing, molecular testing, rapid diagnostics, and point-of-care instruments.
And that diversification allows them to serve massive hospital systems and individual consumers at the same time.
Exactly.
When you talk about rapid decentralized testing, the first product that comes to mind is iStat. What exactly is that, and why is point-of-care testing so crucial?
iStat is essentially a portable, handheld lab analyzer. So instead of sending a blood sample off to a central lab where results might take hours, iStat allows medical professionals to get critical diagnostic information right at the patient's bedside in just a few minutes.
And that speed is vital in an emergency room or a critical care setting.
It's everything. And our sources even note its utility in veterinary medicine, which just highlights its reliability and widespread application outside of traditional human healthcare.
And then you have the other end of the spectrum, the massive high-throughput lab platforms.
Correct. For the massive volume required by hospitals and public health agencies, they have platforms like Alinity and Architect. These machines are just workhorse systems designed for high-throughput testing. They're capable of running thousands of samples quickly and accurately for everything from infectious disease screening to blood chemistry.
And finally, the ultimate example of miniaturization and decentralization, the rapid tests.
That's IDNOW, a small toaster-sized molecular platform that gives rapid PCR-like results, and of course the globally famous BinaxNO rapid antigen test. The diagnostics division has proven its capacity to innovate, to miniaturize, and crucially to scale, which became the single most important factor during the COVID-19 pandemic, a topic we will definitely get into later.
Okay, now we get to Pillar C, medical devices. We said this is the largest revenue driver, accounting for 45% of the company's total sales. This is where the complex, high-margin, life-saving hardware lives.
And it requires immense R&D and really specialized manufacturing. This segment is Abbott's primary focus and is deeply involved in managing two of the most significant health challenges globally: cardiovascular disease and chronic pain.
The scope is enormous.
It is. It includes rhythm management, electrophysiology, heart failure solutions, structural heart repair, and neuromodulation. They are literally putting sophisticated hardware inside people to manage critical health issues.
Let's break down some of these specific cardiovascular devices because the names alone, MitraClip, HeartMate, they sound like something out of science fiction. Can you give us an analogy for what some of these devices actually do?
Sure. Let's start with the structural heart segment. The MitraClip, for example, is for mitral valve repair. The mitral valve controls blood flow between the two left chambers of the heart. If it leaks, which is called regurgitation, it can lead to heart failure.
And that used to mean open heart surgery.
Highly invasive open heart surgery. The MitraClip is a small device delivered minimally invasively via a catheter, which essentially clips the valve leaflets together to reduce the leakage. The innovation is moving from a 6-hour surgery to a much less traumatic procedure with a much faster recovery.
That's a huge quality of life improvement. What about other devices?
Well, you also have the Amplatzer Piccolo Occluder, which is a tiny wire mesh device used to close holes in the hearts of newborns and infants, especially for a condition called patent ductus arteriosus.
Wow.
And for severe heart failure, they produce the HeartMate system, which often refers to their left ventricular assist devices, or LVADs. An LVAD is a mechanical pump implanted in the chest that helps the weak left ventricle pump blood throughout the body.
So for some patients, it's a bridge to a heart transplant, and for others, It's a permanent solution.
Exactly, destination therapy. So they're making tiny repair tools for babies and powerful mechanical pumps for adults. It covers an enormous spectrum.
It really does.
And we can't forget basic vascular access, like the Cien's drug-eluting stent, which helps keep coronary arteries open after a blockage, and the CardioMEMS system, which is a miniaturized sensor implanted in the pulmonary artery that allows doctors to remotely monitor pressure changes in heart failure patients.
So that lets physicians intervene before a patient is hospitalized. It's turning reactive care into proactive management.
That's the goal. And innovation continues rapidly in their rhythm management portfolio. We saw the July 2023 FDA approval for the Aver DR leadless pacemaker system.
Why is leadless such a big deal for pacemakers?
It's a huge deal. Traditional pacemakers rely on these thin wires or leads that run from the device, which is implanted under the collarbone down to the heart. And these leads can fracture, they can become infected, or cause blockages over time.
Which would require another surgery to fix.
A complex and high-risk surgical removal, often. The Aver DR is about the size of a vitamin implanted directly into the heart, and crucially, it eliminates the need for those leads entirely. This significantly reduces complications and simplifies the procedure. It is truly the next generation of cardiac rhythm management.
Okay, let's turn to the other major subsegment in devices, neuromodulation. This focuses on using electrical stimulation to manage neurological issues and chronic pain.
Right. This division develops these sophisticated systems to manage chronic pain and neurological disorders. They produce devices like the Infinity Deep Brain Stimulation System, which is used to treat movement disorders like Parkinson's, and spinal cord stimulators for chronic back and limb pain, like the Proclaim XR recharge-free spinal cord stimulator.
The technical names for the technologies they use are pretty dense. Burst DR technology, Flex Burst 360 technology. What is the listener supposed to understand about the innovation behind those names?
Well, the insight is that this is not just a steady electrical current. Burst DR technology, for example, delivers pulses that mimic the body's natural nerve firing patterns, which studies suggest is much more effective at disrupting pain signals than older, constant stimulation methods.
And the key consumer benefit for the Proclaim XR is right in the name, recharge-free.
Exactly. Because of their low-power design, these systems can often last up to 10 years without needing to be recharged. And that is a massive quality of life improvement for the patient compared to having to plug in a charging vest every night.
Finally, Pillar D, the established pharmaceuticals division. It's the smallest component at 13%. After spinning off the primary R&D pharma to AbbVie, why did Abbott even keep this smaller pharmaceutical arm?
Well, this division fulfills a very specific, low-risk, high-volume strategic role. It focuses specifically on branded generic drugs, and crucially, these are sold exclusively in developing and emerging markets.
So these are medicines that have long since gone off patent globally.
Right. But Abbott manufactures and markets them under local, trusted brand names in countries where access to affordable, quality medicine is absolutely paramount.
So it provides reliable cash flow and a vital international foothold without the massive R&D spending and patent litigation risks that come with new drug development.
Exactly. It leverages drugs developed and proven years ago, maintaining Abbott's brand presence in markets like Latin America, India, and parts of Asia. It serves a public health need while generating stable, predictable revenues. It's a very different, lower-risk business model than the specialty drug focus that went with AbbVie.
Okay, so now we understand the structure. Let's trace how Abbott got from those little Chicago granules in 1888 to becoming this truly global force with 4 massive pillars. It's really a century-plus story of strategic and often aggressive acquisition that constantly redefined the company.
The road to becoming a $40 billion multinational was paved with calculated risk and strategic mergers. And they started taking international steps very early, establishing their first international affiliate in London in 1907, and later expanding to Montreal, Canada. This early global vision was critical.
And we saw them strategically planting flags in developing markets, well before it was common for U.S. companies. By 1948, they'd established operations in Pakistan as a marketing affiliate,
which now has a workforce of over 1,500 employees and 2 manufacturing facilities there. That commitment to maintaining local manufacturing capacity gives them really deep roots in global supply chains.
And, as we noted, the acquisition history is the clearest roadmap of their diversification. The key early move that defined their consumer presence was that merger with Ross Laboratories in 1964.
That was monumental. It instrumentalized their shift into nutrition, bringing in their foundational products like Similac, Pedialyte, and Ensure. That secured their major presence in consumer health, which balanced the more volatile pharma and emerging device markets.
And they continued to beef up the pharmaceutical side, the part that would eventually become AbbVie before the split.
That's right. In the early 2000s, they acquired Knoll, the pharmaceutical division of BASF, for a substantial $6.9 billion in 2001. Then, in 2010, they acquired Solvay SA's pharma unit for $6.2 billion.
And there was a specific target there.
Yes.
Right.
Note the targeting here. The Solvay acquisition was specifically aimed at increasing their emerging market presence, directly strengthening the very established pharmaceuticals division that they kept after the AbbVie split. They were building robust market access.
So if the 1960s secured nutrition, the late 2000s and 2010s were all about aggressive consolidation in medtech and diagnostics, which, as we know, are now their two largest, highest growth segments.
Absolutely. Just look at diabetes care. The acquisition of TheraSense in 2004 laid the foundational technological groundwork for continuous glucose monitoring. They merged TheraSense with their existing Medisense division.
And that marriage of technology and infrastructure ultimately led to the launch of the breakthrough Freestyle Libre line,
which gained that pivotal FDA approval in 2017. And this line shifted diabetes management from painful episodic finger pricks to continuous ongoing monitoring.
The cardiology consolidation, though, is where the price tags truly became massive. It started with acquiring the vascular device division of Guidant in 2006, but the real game changer came in 2017.
The monumental $25 billion acquisition of St. Jude Medical.
$25 billion.
It wasn't just a merger, it was a declaration. $25 billion instantly vaulted Abbott into a leadership position across structural heart, rhythm management, and neuromodulation. St. Jude was a massive player in complex, high-margin cardiovascular devices.
So Abbott didn't just buy a company. They bought top-tier R&D, manufacturing capacity, and a massive portfolio of intellectual property,
making them an immediate, formidable competitor to companies like Medtronic. And when you look at an acquisition of that scale, it doesn't just change Abbott. It fundamentally changes the entire global medtech landscape. They bet their future on devices and hardware.
And they haven't slowed down. Just recently, in 2023, they acquired Cardiovascular Systems, Inc., keeping that 45% medical devices segment growing aggressively.
And they matched that aggressive scaling in diagnostics, too. The $5.8 billion acquisition of Alere in 2017 was strategically significant, particularly for their point-of-care testing capabilities, which later became instrumental during the pandemic.
That Alere deal also included the subsidiary Arriva Medical, which was, at one point, the largest mail-order diabetic supplier in the U.S.
It was, although those facilities later closed in late 2017 due to operational challenges and compliance issues, which we'll touch on later. But the acquisition still brought Abbott critical rapid diagnostics technology.
And the trajectory shows continued aggressive movement into deep diagnostics. Our source materials point to a major future acquisition. The agreement announced in November 2025 to acquire Exact Sciences Corp. For roughly $21 billion.
That is a staggering number and a crystal clear signal. Exact Sciences is known for Cologuard, its non-invasive cancer screening technology. Acquiring them for over $20 billion means Abbott sees complex, deep diagnostics beyond just acute infections as absolutely central to their future.
They're integrating their core lab testing capabilities with advanced molecular screening. They're clearly looking to dominate the next generation of preventative and diagnostic medicine.
No question.
This incredible scale and diversification, of course, does not come without intense scrutiny. When you operate in over 160 countries and your products are literally keeping people alive, you inevitably face significant regulatory and legal challenges. This next section is a necessary look at some of those controversies and liabilities.
It's crucial context, and we have to start with tax strategies, which have drawn significant fire globally. Abbott, like many large U.S. multinationals, has been referenced in numerous reports for utilizing these intricate, sophisticated corporate structures designed specifically to reduce taxation on non-U.S. profits.
And this often involves Ireland, which historically offered highly favorable tax regimes for companies moving intellectual property and profits through the country. Specifically, the company allegedly utilized tax avoidance schemes like the infamous double Irish arrangement and the later single malt tax structure.
Yeah, and if we unpack that complex terminology for the listener, the mechanism generally involves licensing intellectual property. So, patents for medical devices or drug formulas, to a subsidiary established in a low-tax jurisdiction like Ireland, which is then resident for tax purposes in a zero-tax haven like Bermuda.
And this shifting of intellectual property allows the U.S. company to pay substantial royalties to the offshore entity,
Effectively moving billions in profit out of higher tax jurisdictions. And the specific details of Abbott's structure are really striking. Our sources detail a Bermuda-resident Irish holding company called Abbott Laboratories Vascular Enterprises, or ALVE. This entity was structured as an unlimited liability company, meaning it historically didn't have to file public accounts in Ireland.
but some documents did emerge.
They did, and they showed ALVE had pre-tax profits of 2 billion euros on 5.2 billion euros in revenues between 2016 and 2017. And the crucial controversial cell element, it allegedly paid no taxation on those profits.
And the supporting detail makes the function of this structure pretty clear. ALVE, the holding company responsible for distributing products and licensing technology worldwide, reportedly employed no staff in 2017.
0 staff. It operates as a pure financial mechanism for profit repatriation, and it highlights that thin line between aggressive tax planning and, perceived corporate responsibility.
Okay, moving away from financial practices, the company has a significant history of high-profile federal fraud and kickback settlements stemming from its pharmaceutical division before the AbbVie split. These cases reveal some of the cultural challenges that existed within that drug marketing arm.
They do. The earliest major incident we have details on is the Leuprorelin case. It involved TTAP Pharmaceutical Products, which was a 50-50 joint venture between Abbott Laboratories and Takeda Chemical Industries. In October 2001, TAP settled criminal and civil charges for federal and state Medicare fraud and illegal marketing.
And that settlement was enormous for the time, $875 million in total.
It was. It included $290 million for violating the Prescription Drug Marketing Act and another $559.5 million for overcharging Medicare by inflating the price of the drug Lupron. At the time, it was a record-high pharmaceutical settlement.
And it was largely driven by whistleblower lawsuits.
Yes, filed under the False Claims Act. It sent shockwaves through the entire pharmaceutical industry, indicating that the U.S. government was prepared to prosecute systematic fraud aggressively.
And legal troubles were not isolated. Just 2 years later, in 2003, came Operation Headwaters.
Right, where Abbott and 2 of its units agreed to pay a combined civil settlement and criminal conviction of $600 million for offering illegal kickbacks to physicians to encourage them to prescribe the company's product.
The fact that they were caught offering kickbacks, even to FBI undercover agents, speaks volumes.
It does. It suggests the pervasive, systemic nature of the marketing practices they were employing, and this culture continued right up until the point of the AbbVie split. In 2012, they faced another major fine, this time concerning the drug Depakote.
The Depakote case resulted in a $500 million fine and a $198.5 million forfeiture for illegal marketing. This was specifically for off-label promotion.
Meaning they marketed the drug for uses that had not been approved as safe and effective by the FDA.
Why is off-label promotion such a severe legal transgression?
Because the FDA is tasked with ensuring patient safety and efficacy. When a company markets a drug for an unapproved use like marketing Depakote for elderly dementia patients, which the FDA never approved, they are circumventing the fundamental safety checks designed to protect the public. The government viewed this as placing corporate profit above patient well-being.
Hence the $500 million penalty. More recently, the focus shifted to their diagnostics acquisitions, post-split. In 2021, 2 subsidiaries that were part of that 2017 Alair acquisition, Arriva Medical and Alair Inc., paid a $160 million settlement to resolve claims that they fraudulently billed Medicare for glucose monitors.
The Department of Justice alleged that Arriva used free glucose monitors to essentially induce patients to order more consumable supplies, which constituted kickbacks on the increased sales. But what's even more egregious is that they were accused of charging Medicare for devices given to patients who were ineligible or even deceased.
Wow. That just paints a picture of systemic, profit-driven fraud within those subsidiary operations.
It does, and it underscores the risk of acquiring large companies with potentially complex compliance issues.
Beyond financial impropriety, product safety issues have brought the company under intense public pressure, particularly concerning its nutritional products. The most high-profile incident in recent memory was, of course, the infant formula crisis.
The infant formula recall of 2022 was a significant public health crisis. Abbott recalled baby formulas from the market and had to shut down its Michigan manufacturing plant following complaints of illness and death in infants caused by serious bacterial infections, specifically Chronobacter sakazaki.
And the subsequent national formula shortage created immense pressure on the company and regulators. The public trust damage was substantial.
It was, even though the facility was allowed to reopen in June 2022 after meeting FDA requirements. But the legal fallout is still ongoing and severe, specifically regarding premature infants.
This is where we touch upon the necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC, lawsuit. In July 2024, a jury ordered Abbott to pay a staggering $495 million jury verdict in the case of Margot Gill versus Abbott Laboratories.
Right. To understand the gravity of that $500 million number, you need to understand what NEC is.
Please explain.
Necrotizing enterocolitis is a devastating, life-threatening gastrointestinal disease that primarily affects premature infants, where tissue in the intestines dies. The lawsuit alleged that Abbott's cow's milk-based infant formula, when given to premature babies, significantly increased the risk of developing NEC compared to human breast milk or donor milk.
And the severity of the disease and the vulnerability of the patients made this case particularly high stakes.
Extremely. And the verdict itself was divided, $95 million in compensatory damages and a massive $400 million in punitive damages.
And when a jury awards punitive damages of that scale, it signals strong disapproval of the defendant's conduct. It makes you wonder, does the source material suggest Abbott has a long-term plan to mitigate this specific product liability risk? Or is the sheer revenue from their other devices simply enough to absorb these kinds of costs?
That dynamic tension is exactly what defines modern Abbott. The revenues from devices and diagnostics are immense, but the liability attached to infant nutrition is catastrophic. The long-term plan involves rigorous recertification of their facilities and massive investment in quality control, but the public relations and legal battles will continue for years.
It really highlights that no matter how sophisticated your high-tech division is, basic consumer product safety remains a core vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And it's not just nutritional products facing recalls, though. Their cutting-edge medical devices, the source of 45% of their revenue, are also subject to safety concerns.
Certainly. In July 2023, Abbott had to recall certain Proclaim and Infinity IPGs. Those are the implanted pulse generators used in deep brain stimulation and spinal cord stimulation. The issue was that patients were sometimes unable to exit MRI mode.
And what happens if the patient can't exit MRI mode?
The device is subject to electromagnetic interference that can cause permanent damage, potentially requiring surgery to remove or replace the implanted device. This is a severe complication.
How many incidents were there?
Our sources confirm 186 reported incidents and 73 reported injuries, though thankfully no deaths. It just demonstrates the high-risk, high-reward nature of pioneering medical hardware. These technologies change lives, but even minor software or component failures can have major, life-altering consequences for the patient.
Okay, let's pivot now from the history of controversies to the most powerful demonstration of Abbott's current strength. Diagnostics, particularly during the height of the global crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic response showcased their agility and their rapid innovation capability.
It was without a doubt an inflection point for the entire diagnostics division. Abbott proved they were not just big, but fast. They were incredibly agile in securing emergency use authorizations, or EUAs, starting with molecular tests very early in the pandemic.
They rolled out tests for both the ID Now system, that small toaster-sized machine that gave highly accurate molecular results in as little as 13 minutes, and their high-throughput lab platforms like M2000 and Alinity by March and May of 2020.
Which meant they were immediately covering both centralized hospital testing and decentralized urgent care testing.
A two-pronged approach.
Exactly. They also moved quickly into serology, the antibody testing necessary for public health surveillance. They received EUA for IgG antibody tests on the Architect and Alinity I systems in April and May 2020, helping establish who had previously been exposed to the virus. Their strategy was comprehensive: test for active infection and test for past exposure.
But the true game changer, the product that made them a household name in the diagnostic space globally, was the Binax 9W Rapid Antigen Test. This product crystallized the concept of decentralized health monitoring.
Absolutely. Approved in August 2020, it was groundbreaking because it was credit card sized, delivered results in 15 minutes, and critically cost only about $5. It was cheap, fast, and portable. It was also compatible with the Navica mobile app to track results, providing a crucial, if short-lived, digital infrastructure.
The scale of deployment was truly unprecedented, especially after the immense effort required to scale up. Forbes reported that the firm delivered over 400 million COVID-19 tests in total.
with 300 million of those being shipped in the fourth quarter of 2020 alone.
Just incredible.
That showed they could not only innovate rapidly, but scale production to meet immense global emergency demand. And this capacity to scale diagnostics, even while simultaneously struggling with major quality control issues in their nutrition segment, shows the dichotomy of the modern Abbott. They are pioneers in one area and dangerously exposed in another.
Looking ahead, Abbott is clearly leveraging that success and infrastructure in diagnostics and sensor technology into the consumer space. While their continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, has been foundational, with the Freestyle Libre 3 receiving FDA clearance in May 2022, they've significantly broadened the application of that sensor technology.
The Freestyle Libre line itself is a massive success story. The technology received the prestigious Galien Foundation Award for Best Medical Technology in the last 50 years. It acknowledges its transformative impact on diabetes care by allowing patients to check glucose levels just by scanning a small sensor on their arm with a phone or a reader.
This brings us to the introduction of Lingo in January 2022. This feels like the critical link between medical necessity and consumer optimization. What is Lingo, and why is it important for Abbott's future?
Lingo is a line of consumer biowearable sensors that utilizes the core technology developed for the Libre CGMs. It's designed to move beyond traditional medical monitoring and allow everyday individuals, not just diabetics, to collect continuous biological readings to optimize their exercise and nutrition regimens.
So it's the Libre platform repurposed for the general wellness market.
Exactly. Capitalizing on the increasing consumer demand for personalized health data. So if I'm an elite runner or just trying to manage my weight better, I can use the same type of high-fidelity sensor technology previously reserved for complex medical conditions.
It's about datafying wellness.
And creating a recurring revenue stream outside of the traditional insurance and regulatory framework. It's a huge strategic pivot that other companies are racing to match.
They're also continuously improving their core medical devices. We mentioned the advancements in neuromodulation.
Yes, the Proclaim Plus spinal cord stimulation system, which received FDA approval in August 2022, is another example of incremental, patient-focused innovation. It's notable because it can target 6 independent pain sites within the patient's body with a single device, offering much more precise pain relief.
And coupled with that 10-year battery life we discussed, these advancements offer real, tangible quality-of-life benefits for chronic pain sufferers.
They do. And showing their continued agility in diagnostics, in October 2022, they received the first FDA emergency authorization for commercial monkeypox testing with their Alinity M MPXV test.
Once again proving their ability to rapidly pivot their lab systems to address new emerging health threats.
And it's important to maintain the corporate context around these innovations, especially since we spent so much time on controversies. Abbott has achieved high-level corporate recognition for its stability and operational excellence. They are consistently ranked on the Fortune 500 and Global 2000 lists and have been included on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for 18 consecutive years.
And that speaks to their scale and perceived stability in the financial world.
But that stability was tested by global geopolitical events. We noted that following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Abbott continued business operations in Russia, though they did suspend non-essential activities like new investments and advertising.
And research evaluating corporate responses placed them in the buying time category.
With a grade D rating from the Yale School of Management, this rating reflects the decision to maintain a substantive business presence, including operations that impact pharmaceutical availability, while postponing future capital commitments. It's a difficult position that balances global health needs with geopolitical concerns, and they chose to maintain their existing framework.
And for a final context point, they are a massive international brand recognized far beyond medicine. They hold the title sponsorship of the World Marathon Majors since 2015.
Ensuring their brand name is seen by millions of consumers focused on health and fitness every single year. So if we synthesize all of this information, we see a clear and really complex picture.
And
Abbott Laboratories maintains its status as a diversified global giant by balancing the scale of necessity, the stable revenue from nutrition and established pharmaceuticals, with the high-tech, rapid innovation sectors of diagnostics and medical devices.
And what's truly remarkable is the dynamic tension that exists within this corporation. They can simultaneously be responsible for essential childhood nutrition and face a $500 million jury verdict for alleged harm caused by their formula. all while pioneering the next generation of continuous glucose monitoring and minimally invasive heart technology. It's the complexity and the inherent contradictions of a $40 billion healthcare company that you, the learner, really need to grasp.
This isn't a single product company or even a single industry player. It's an ecosystem of highly specialized businesses unified under the Abbott name, constantly shifting its strategic weight, moving away from pharmaceutical patent risk, and aggressively into medical hardware and sensing technology.
So what does this all mean for the future of health? We saw that Abbott's continuous glucose monitors paved the way for consumer biowearables like Lingo. That technology is about collecting personalized, high-frequency data outside the clinical setting, transforming health from something that happens at the doctor's office to something that is managed minute by minute on your smartphone.
Right. And given this rapid advancement in personalized diagnostic sensors and the company's clear $21 billion move into cancer screening with Exact Sciences, the provocative thought we want to leave you with is this.
How will the proliferation of these personalized diagnostic sensors, the ability to continuously monitor your body's chemistry, not just your steps, fundamentally change how we define and manage our own health in the next 5 years?
Will we move definitively from episodic, reactive medical care to a state of continuous, consumer-managed, optimized health monitoring? Something to chew on as you consider the future of healthcare.